Hey, good evening everyone, it's David here. Welcome to another MDB live webinar. So we are about to get started. As always, we are streaming to two platforms, YouTube and Facebook in parallel. So let's wait a couple more seconds so that other could join us as well. So hello everyone. Today we're gonna learn on how to deploy our web page to servers so that everyone could see our page. Everyone could see page which we just created, so we are already known HTML, CSS, JavaScript, so we are capable of creating some pages, and now it's time to deploy them so everyone else could see, and not only people who has access to our laptop, desktop, or whatever. Guys, I'm very sorry that last week our webinar was cancelled, but unfortunately I had some emergency and I'd end up being in hospital because of my appendix. So I get the appendectomy, I guess that's what it's called in Latin. So they get my appendix removed. So I basically wasn't able to even sit, not to mention running the webinar. But I hope that now everything is okay again. So I hope that we'll very quickly get up to speed and we'll continue with our webinars. So just quickly wanted to remind you that you can always join our. Yeah, I did remove Jay. Just keep in mind that you can always join our Facebook group, and I think that I'm not sure whether they have been scheduled already, but we already have a list of next webinars. So after today's webinar, when we're going to learn how to deploy web page to different servers, we're going to do it to 3 different servers. So we're going to use the GitHub pages. We're going to use one of the the common typical FTP server, and the last one is going to be from MDB, which is called MDB Go. So I'm going to show you 3 of them to you, and then we're going to move to package manager. So we're going to learn how to use npm, and then we will learn about CSS preprocessors, so how to add extra logic to our CSS, how to make it more smarter, more robust, more flexible with use of variables, functions, and so on. So we're gonna see how we can create CSS much faster and easier. And then we will move to Vue, React, and Angular. So something I hope which will be very interesting for you guys. So we're gonna quickly go through each of those so you can decide, or you can get your first impression on those 3 different frameworks, 3 different libraries. So you will be able to have this kind of feeling whether you like it or not. Okay, guys, I see that there are most of people has joined already. So let's start. Let's get moved. Thank you for all your support, all the messages I got privately. Yeah. So I'm really happy to get back, and I need to admit that lying in the hospital and doing nothing is like the biggest punishment for someone who would like to do like me, who would like to code in this time or do something else. So thanks again for your support, and let's get started. So guys, how to deploy our web page. What we're gonna talk about today are we're gonna talk about the main concepts related to hosting itself. So we're gonna talk about the domains, we got about SSL certificates, and so on and so on. And then I'm gonna show you 3 ways on how to deploy our page to the web. So the first, as I mentioned, is gonna be GitHub pages. It's fast. though it's very limited, but I think it's a good starting point, and it's good for you to know that you can do it. It's also the free option. Then we're gonna use some of the classic hosting, and then I'm gonna show you the new approach. So something which we believe is gonna be a standard in a very soon in the future. So let's talk about the main concept when it comes to deployment. So what do we have to know, what we should know, what is the basic knowledge regarding the hosting when it comes to deploying our page to a server. So what we're gonna talk about is a domain, of course, then the different hosting types. So we're gonna compare them and what are the pros and cons for each and every of them. What kind of servers do we have? And by the server, I mean, the application which is running our page. We're gonna be mostly talking about Apache and Nginx. And then we're gonna briefly talk about database, when we need it, and what kind of database we usually need, and what kind of hosting it's related to different databases type. And then we're gonna talk about the SSL certificates and backups. So let's start with domain. So what domain is? I mean, you probably know that, but basically domain is like the address of our page, right? So look at that. I mean, if I'm typing, every time I'm typing mdbootstrap.com and I'm pressing enter, as I'm getting to this page. But I mean, this is obviously a human language, right? And computers don't really need to use this kind of language, so they don't use actually words, they use numbers. So when we do something like this, if you open any kind of terminal you use, so if you're on the Windows, you can just press start and start typing command line, and you will see the command prompt application. You will get something like this. What you can do, you can just type ping and provide the address of any web page you would like to check. And in return, you're gonna get the IP address of this web page, right? So this is the page. If we check ping.google.com, we're also gonna get the address. So we could possibly just use this IP instead of the name, and as you can see, it just simply works, right? So technically we could just use IP, and that would be faster. Technically, if you know the IP, it's faster because the DNS doesn't have to resolve. We're gonna talk about it in a few seconds. So if you know IP address, you are directly going to a given server. Instead, what we are usually doing, we are just providing the name, and what is going on, what's happening is that our DNS has to resolve this name. So it has to find out what is the IP address related to our domain. So DNS stands for domain name system. And how does it work in certain, I'm going to use certain simplification over here just for the sake of simplicity, because you shouldn't bother with that. I mean, this is some kind of knowledge which will be useful in the future when you're going to build more advanced web pages or more advanced applications, or applications which are stored in different servers in different parts of the world, on different continents. But for now, it's just like a generic knowledge for you that you could understand what's going on. So what's actually happening when we type web page address into our web browser and when we hit enter? So what's going on is that our this part, the user, our desktop, our laptop is hitting the resolver. So the resolver is like the nearest server. So usually it's probably somewhere at IPS, so Internet Provider Service offering. So someone who is offering you internet connection. So it's hitting this and it's asking like this: I want to go to www.nameshield.net. And this server, this resolver, will try to resolve and find an IP address for you. And what's gonna happen is that first it's gonna hit a root server, so like the top server which holds information about different domains. And there are 13 sets of DNS root servers. So those IPs are well known to all the resolvers, and they are managed by different organizations, so they are independent, right? So it's because it's very important. If DNS would be down, if DNS were down, well, you can imagine what kind of mess that would mean for the entire globe internet. So what's going on is that it's going to the root server to identify identify the closest domain name server, top level domain server. What does it mean? The top level, it's this, like, you know, this ending, like .net, .com, .com, .whatever, .country. So this top level domains, there is a dedicated server for this one. So then our resolver will send this request to find out where is this domain, but it will be going like from the backwards, right? I mean from the end. So it starts with .net, and then it will go to it will get the address for the server maintaining .net or .com domain, and it will ask about a specific domain like this one, nameshield.net, right? So it will hit another server asking, okay, so please let me know what's the IP address of this domain. And this server won't answer directly, but it will say that for this specific nameshield.net, you should go to this particular server. So the final server, which is maintaining our domain. And then at the very end, it will get the IP address for the page. So because this one is responsible for nameshield.net, it will reply with a particular IP address. So as you can see, there are a few steps which are going on when it comes to the domain resolving part. So I want to quickly check if I'm capable of doing this. Look at this one. So there is what you can do. You can use trace RT. So trace RT and the domain name, and this will show you how our request is actually going on. So as you can see, it's not going directly to our page. It will just try to call these different servers, and then it will at the end get the response back. Actually, now it's timing out for some reason. We'll try again later or with some different domain, but this will show you how this looks like. So what's happening here is that once you finally get this IP, what happens is that usually the server is caching this IP for you. So next time you're gonna try this page. Next time when you will try to visit this page again, you're not gonna go through all this requesting part again, because you will already know the IP address. Let me see. Let's try with. I'm connected to the VPN, so it might be delaying some trace route, but let it finish somewhere in the background, and once it's done, I'm gonna get back to this one. So what is important and what you really have to understand is that this name domain is related to the IP address, and it's usually pointing to IP address, and it means that you can have a domain both in one of the domain provider, and you might have a server at your site with your IP address, and you are always binding this this domain name with some IP address, and this is getting propagated, published to all these servers, and that's how other people can visit your page. They don't have to know the specific IP address. So once you register your domain, the service provider, domain provider will take care of it. And what you have to really remember or understand is that whenever you register a certain domain, you should get access to this DNS configuration, where you can just specify the IP address of your hosting, and the domain provider will take care of publishing this information to the world on behalf of you. Okay, so let's move to the different hosting types. So we have different hosting types, hosting options available nowadays. They are not all options listed here. I just use the most common one and the one which might be important for you in a future. Let's quickly go through all of them. So what we have here is called shared hosting. So if you're going to any kind of hosting, and by the way, guys, I'm not, I'm gonna be giving you some examples of the hosting over here, but we don't have any affiliate program with them. So it's not like I will be proposing you some hosting over the other. It's just I'm just sharing my experience with different hosting providers. And that's it. So just for you to know that there are different. I'm gonna use some as an example, but you don't have to stick to them. You can use whatever you want. And by the way, just the trace route has finished, so you can look how it was going, right? So it was asking different servers and finally get the an IP address for this one. If you remember here, we were pinging google.com here, 172.17.238, and this is where we get this address finally as a last response from the last server. So this is the last server which respond with the specific IP address, right? So we ask this one, that one, that one, that one, at the end, and there are two more, and then at the end this one gave us a proper address. But this trace route took some time, but when you do ping, the same is happening underneath, and you can see that it was very, very, very fast. It was like in the milliseconds. Okay, guys, so talking about hostings. So there are usually currently there are different hosting providers, and one of the there are global hosting providers like GoDaddy or HostGator and so on, and they are kind of global players. And obviously in most of the countries usually you have a local hosting provider, so it's up to you which one you want to use. But what they have in common is that usually they offer you something which is called a shared hosting. What does it mean? This means that probably you will see some kind of offer. Let's have a look at, let's say, GoDaddy. GoDaddy. Let's have a look at this one. So this is American one. And I got the French version because I'm using VPN. Let me see if I can change. Oh, actually Brazil. Give me English. Okay, let it be or United States. Let's have a look. United States version. Hosting. So as you can see here, you can have a different hosting options. And what those hosting options usually are, so you can see you get you can host single website, and then you have some storage, you have some performance, and some databases over here. So how does it actually works? Well, the point here is that those server providers, they have you can imagine you would have a single server, like you have your PC, your server, whatever it is. You just have it on your in your home, and what you are doing is you are installing a server, and we're gonna talk about server software in a few minutes. So what you can do, you could possibly do the same, pretty much the same. So if you have a quick connection, which by the way should be symmetric, which means the download and upload is pretty much the same, because most of the connections aren't symmetric. That's because we as users, we usually download more than we upload, but for the server is other way around. It's server which is sending most of the data usually, so you should have this upload speed very fast. But let's assume you have that, right? So you have a spare computer and you have a spare connection and you have like a free electricity, so you can set up your server. So what you are doing, you have a single computer with 16 gigs of RAM and CPU and so on, and you are setting up your server, and obviously you can set up multiple pages over there. So you can have like to your pages, your neighbor page, and so on. So what you could possibly do, you could just create you could host like 100 pages on this particular server, which means that 100 pages will share exactly the same CPU, exactly the same RAM, and exactly same storage. You could just put some limits that each page can use up to 100 gigabytes of storage, and you could give a different username and password to your user, and you could basically start charging them like $3, $5, $7 a month for the fact that they can use your server. So this is what basically shared hosting is. So you're buying like a piece of space which is commonly used with others, and this is very good starting point because it's very cheap. It's the cheapest, it's basically cheapest. But as on the cons side, because it's shared, you never know how this computer is the process is same to host a website in a different hosting company. There's a question from Naim. They are slightly different, but the main concepts are the same. I'm gonna use one to show you the process, and it's pretty much the same everywhere. It's just the admin tab will be slightly different. So the point is that it's a very good starting point. It's quite cheap, and there are all even free server, and I'm gonna show you the free options today. There are usually limits on that because they don't want since it's free, they don't want users to utilize too many resources, and as a result they're always limiting you in a certain way, but this is a good starting point because usually when you create a small page it doesn't have a lot of traffic, and this is what they are actually this is how this offer is built. This is based on assumption that they will host like the tiny pages, so you can have like 100 in one server, and none of them should generate too much traffic, because obviously if one of them would have a large traffic, it would just consume the entire CPU, entire RAM, and that will affect other pages, and that's what they don't want to, so that's why they are limiting this. So the shared hosting is the very first option for you, and what you're gonna get in return is you're gonna have an FTP access for transferring your files, and what you're gonna also have is sometimes you're gonna have a database, like limited database with some storage, and that's basically it. And you will obviously get the option to connect your domain to this server, right? So they will tell you, okay, if you want to connect your domain, then just do this and that. Obviously, most of them, they offer you an option to buy domain as well as another service of theirs. So this is the very first option, and this is something which you will probably start with your journey. So you can start with some small servers where they are starting with like $1, $2, $3, $5. That depends on the hosting provider, and that depends on your country, and so on and so on. Then this next step is like VPS. So this is virtual private server. What does it mean? This is also a shared hosting to some extent, but this works slightly different. What does it mean? When you get a virtual private server, it's like you are getting a virtual machine. So then again, they are buying a very powerful host, which has 32 cores CPU, which can be visualized, which means you can have 64 vCores, so-called. So like one physical core can actually work as a 2 cores, right? So in theory you got 64 cores, and you are buying one single machine which has 64 cores and then 122 gigabytes of RAM memory, and they are creating let's say 32 or 64 virtual machines on that single host. And then let's do some math here, because I'm just talking, and that might be a little bit, you know, without seeing that might be a little bit too abstract. So let's assume that you are buying something which is called the bare metal server. So you're just buying a physical computer, and that will have like 32 cores, which can have 64 vCores. And then you have, I don't know, 128 gigabytes of RAM. And usually you don't have a graphic card on that because you don't need it. Those servers, they are not meant for a graphic, which means that you could technically create 32 machines, VPS, and each of them would have like two vCore plus what is it? So you have 32 machines, so that will give 4 gigabyte of RAM machine, and that's how you are buying this one for, let's say, I don't know, 5 or let's say 3,000 USD, and then you can sell each of those by, I don't know, 100 or 200, let's say $100 a month. Obviously the numbers are just, you know, they are just fake, but this will give you this will obviously give you 3,200 on a monthly basis, right? So that's how they get the revenue. So you are getting your machine, and instead for you, I mean, it's easier for you because you don't have to buy, you don't have to put this machine in your home, you don't need to take care about the you know, high internet connection, you don't need to take care about the electricity, you know, you don't need to care about other stuffs, and you just get like the machine where you can just log in using your login and password, and this machine can install whatever you want, right? So you can install Windows on that, you can install Unix, Linux on that, you can install whatever you want, even a Mac OS. So those are the VPS. So this is when it comes to, you know, web servers, this is much more powerful, but the problem is that what you're gonna get, it's like, you know, something like that. So I just got, you know, I just got the Linux installed over here. So you will have to, they will probably come with pre-installed operating system like Unix, and then you will have to, you know, install everything by your own. So for example, I've got this one, this is virtualized machine on my desktop, so I have virtual Linux inside my Windows, but I don't have any Apache server here, so I cannot host anything here, so I would have to install everything and maintain by myself. So that's the second option. Then we have a dedicated server, so something which I just told you. So this is like a bare metal machine. So this is exactly this is something which I already told you. They can give you like totally bare metal machine, so it's like physical machine which you are renting, and they will take care of putting this in their server in the place where they had to keep other servers. So they will take care about the, you know, electricity and so on and so on, and it's like yours. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's much faster because there is no virtualization layer on top of that, so it will be faster, and they will just charge you for maintenance of this one, and again, you don't have to keep it at your site. So this is already, you know, when your site is big, is huge. Next one is the cloud hosting. So all this AWS, Google Cloud, and so on and so on. So those are like a mix of this virtual VPS and shared hosting. So what you are getting is this kind of instance of VPS, but this instance is usually like pre-formatted for you. So you got the instance for WordPress, you got the instance for, you know, web hosting, and so on and so on. the big plus or the biggest advantage which is advertised by them is that you can easily scale them, right? So, you know, if you have your VPS, what we just discussed, and you get this one VPS with 2 gigabytes of RAM, with 2 CPUs and 4 gigabytes of RAM, and suddenly your traffic goes up and you're spending 99% of your CPU, you know, what you have to do is, in order to increase the resources, you would have to get another VPS. So another VPS, perhaps stronger, with 4 CPU and 60 gigabytes of RAM, but you would have to go through manual installation, connection, network configuration, and so on. So you add some load balancing, right? So you would have to put balance some load between these two VPSs and so on. So this is all manual work. What they offer you is that they can even automate it, that, you know, if your traffic is going high, it's going up, that they can just turn on extra instance, which is predefined. You don't have to do anything. It will just spread the load, and it will just use both of the servers. And when it's when you don't need it anymore, you can just stop the extra instance when the load is going down. So they offer you a flexibility. So this sounds very sexy, but obviously there is a price for it, and you would have to pay more because someone is doing this flexibility for you and all the configuration. So this is another option, right? And I know that many users use this AWS because then you don't need to learn that by yourself. But as again as always, I remind you, I'm telling you guys, I really believe that you should go through all of that by yourself, so you know how does it work. So you should try to configure all of that, not now, in the future. And I'm gonna teach you how to do that. I'm gonna teach you how to use Unix, how to use different servers like Nginx or Apache and so on, just for you to know how it works, and then you can decide that you don't want to do it yourself and just want to go with the cloud hosting. And the last but not the least are so-called managed hostings. So this is like a total mix of everything together. So basically what you can do is that you can just go to a certain hosting provider which is offering you this managed hosting, and they are dedicated to different solutions. So you might have I don't know, let's go to WordPress.com, for example. So this is something somewhere where you can just create a WordPress site on their dedicated hosting. So they have everything prepared for a WordPress itself, and they will take care of all behind all the technical stuff behind the scene. And they are, the promise here is that they know the best how to optimize all the servers for specific use case like a WordPress. So if you don't want to bother with that, you can just go with the managed hosting, which will basically take care of everything. So to sum up, guys, we will start with shared hosting, and then I'm going to show you some other options as well. But this is something which you should do at least once for you to understand how does it work. Then let's move to the server types, and by server types I mean the software which is run on those servers. So basically, Apache and Nginx, they have like more than 70 market share in all software used for servers. And by the way, guys, as always, if you have any questions, just do not hesitate to ask them. I will try to answer them, and let me know if this is clear for you, because I know it's a little bit theoretical in compared to the previous lessons we had, but this is actually theoretical part for you to understand how it works. And the practical part will follow in the future when we're gonna install Apache or Nginx on our machines. But that will be we would need a dedicated lesson for an Apache itself and Nginx and so on. So for now, we're just doing an introduction for that one. Let me know if everything is clear, and I will just continue. Okay, guys. So long story make short, I don't want to go into much details. probably you're gonna start your journey with Apache. Why? It's because you know, when you have a server, we need to take care of a couple of things. So one thing is a management of the request, right? So we already know that we are sending this GET request. So whenever we put an website address into your browser, it's just sending this GET address. It's setting this GET request to the server, so we need a server to translate this GET request. So what's happening is this is what server does, right? So first thing is just accepting this request. Now imagine that you have like 3 different websites on your server. So what server also have to do is that it has to manage those requests, because all 3 requests, let's say you have your website, website 1, website 2, website 3.com on your hosting, and all 3 requests will go to the same IP address. So a server have to distinguish, okay, so this is website 1, so go to this folder. This is website 2, go to that folder, and so on. So this is first thing which is going on. Secondly, you need and actually let's put a stop here, because this is the main difference between Apache and Nginx. So Nginx is doing mostly that. So it's just taking care of your requests. So all the servers which are coming to our server, it's just, you know, coordinating them and sending to the different endpoint. And let me quickly check. Maybe I will be able to show you that. Let me see if I will be able to show you how this looks like in a real world. So history, grep engine access. Okay, so I'm gonna show you some sample logs from Nginx server. Let me just type this comment here. I know you don't see it yet. So guys, this is how the Nginx logs look like. So this is what's going on our server right now. So all these lines are different requests to our page, and this is what Nginx is basically taking care of. So for example, if there is a request for an image, so like let's stop it here. So if there is a request for an image, it can reply itself because it can serve a static content, so it will immediately send a picture back. If there is some call to API, whatever, it will just redirect it to correct place. And this is what this Nginx server mostly does, and this is how it looks like. So this is taking care of all the requests. So this is the main difference between Nginx and Apache, because Nginx does only this, and as a result it's much faster than an Apache, but you will need some extra stuff, because you will need, for example, if your web page is static, you don't need it. But if your web page use PHP, then you need this PHP server which can understand PHP. So that's why you will probably start with an Apache, because Apache is modular, so you can just add new modules like database module, like a PHP module, and so on. So when you install Apache, and that's how on Windows it looks like. So when you install this kind of bundle like XAMPP, it will usually have this Apache MySQL file Tomcat and other modules over here. So you have everything predefined, and this is already working. So this configuration is much simpler than Nginx. Yeah, this is like more for an entry level, but because of this flexibility, because of this ease of use, there is a price. It uses more resources. So usually when it comes to bigger pages, you will probably move to Nginx, and you will have to install like PHP. You will have to install PHP by yourself. But don't worry, we're gonna learn how to do that. For you, just to understand, is that mostly you will take care. You will have to deal with Apache, and but you also might heard about Nginx. So just for you to understand that Apache is like all in one. So it will have like both PHP interpreter, database, and so on. And you will probably every time you see the .htaccess file, this means that the server is using Apache, and most of the shared servers will do that. And Nginx is usually when you see the Nginx error, and you can see this all the time over the web, and probably you've seen something like this over and over, like this one, right? Nginx 4. So this you probably now you can kind of feel as this is getting familiar, or that one, like 502 bad gateway Nginx. So this is like Nginx errors. Okay guys, let's move on. Database. There are 3 questions which we want to cover quickly here. So the first one, do you need database? Because you might don't need it if your web page is more of like a like a landing page, and you just want to show something to your users. You don't need database. You can keep everything in files. So if your web page is like landing page with some contact form, you don't really need a database, right? So then that will also answer probably, or help you to make proper choice when it comes to proper hosting for you. Secondly, you need to answer yourself whether your framework or library you are using, whether it requires database. Because, for example, even though you're not gonna use a database itself, but you would like to have a WordPress site, then you're gonna need a database, because WordPress itself utilize a database. So when it comes to WordPress, you'll need a database. And then what kind of database you need? So again, most often you're gonna deal with MySQL, Postgres. So those are like those are so-called relational database. And again, it's gonna be a huge simplification, but we can just assume that every time you think of a database as a table, as an Excel sheet, as a Google sheet, then it's relational. And when it comes to more flexible, like you've seen on the last webinar, JSON structure. So when it's more flexible like this, then probably it's other choice, like Mongo or something like that. And why is it important? Because, as I said, SQL usually comes with Apache as a module. So when it comes to shared hosting, you usually get a MySQL web server and database. And if you want to use something else like Mongo DB, then you will have to go with VPS and install it yourself and configure, or you'll have to go with some managed hostings. And so like this, hosting which will be dedicated for Mongo database, and which is when something is dedicated, obviously the price goes up for that. And there are obviously other databases and there are many different type of databases depending on how you want to use. So you can even have a like Hadoop database, which is used underneath, for example, by Google to store a terrific amount of data, and then the database obviously isn't a single server anymore. It's like a spread over like 50 machines or something. So there are dedicated solutions for that, but this is not obviously our concern at the moment. For now, we most often gonna go with either MySQL or Mongo. Okay, so let's talk about the SSL certificate. So something which is very important, and 1 year back I would say that you don't have to bother with HTTPS if you don't work with sensitive data. Like if you are not collecting, let's say, login and passwords on your web page, if you are not charging your customers and you are not collecting credit card data, that you don't need to use HTTPS. Well, but this is not valid anymore, and the reason behind it is that Google is giving you an extra point for using HTTPS, even though you don't use it. I don't know whether it's a good decision or not. It's not me to judge, but the point here is when you use SSL, it's obviously more secure, but it's slower. I mean, when you use SSL, your data are encrypted, so it takes time to encrypt the data. So your website is just getting slower, slightly, but slower. So I'm not sure whether there's a good point in doing this in the page which doesn't require that. On the other hand, probably it's just a good idea to have everything secured by default. Jay, I wish we could get those prices. Could you please rephrase this sentence? I mean, do you want me to show you some prices, some sample prices? If so, we can do it after the webinar. I will be happy to just Google some of them and we will see what the prices are. Coming back to SSL, long story make short, don't get cheated. I mean, many websites will offer you an extra certificate and ask you to pay some ridiculous amount of money for that, but you can always find a cheaper alternative, and very often you can get this just in a package. Yeah, I mean, many of them, they offer you an SSL certificate as a part of package, so just try to look for them, or don't pay like $300 for this one, because I mean, there are certificates which cost like this. For example, let me show you. I'm gonna show you an example of the Polish bank, because it's just the first which comes to my mind. So if you want to have this certificate, which by the way, why it's not logging, like this one, right? Certificate issued to. So if you want to have this name over here, it's not anyhow more secure. I mean, it's slightly more secure, but even other SSL certificates are still secure enough, but you are paying for this one, right? So this is like more PR stuff for you. So you can just put your name over here, and there is price for it. Coming back to the main subject. Why do you need certificate? Guys, look at this one. You can easily sniff network. What does it mean? You're going to cafe, there is an open network without password, or the password is shared with all the customers of the given cafe. And what's going on? You're just opening your laptop, you are opening a Wireshark or the other application, and you just start to sniff, right? Because if we all use the same Wi-Fi connection, you are able to listen what is being transmitted between the laptop person sitting next to you and the router. And when you sniff it and you are not using secured connection, this is what's happening. Look at this one. So this is a screen from a Wireshark. So I just did some like small demo. So I connected to some page without SSL, and as you can see, I can clearly see the login email and the password hacked, right? So if the web page doesn't use SSL and someone's gonna be sniffing, then someone will see all the information which is exchanged in any kind of form, login form, credit card form. It's just visible to hackers. So that's why it is important. And when you have HTTPS, it's like unreadable, right? It is encrypted and you are not able to see the content. So that's why it's very important for you guys to always check whether you got this connection secure. But then again, there is a trick over here. The fact that you are connected to the secure website doesn't mean the website itself is secure, and there are a lot of exploits like that. And if I would be hacker trying to hack like mdbootstrap.com, I could try to just to create a domain, something like mdboot, let's say strap.com. So as you can see, I just use single O over here, so you can't spot the difference. And nothing stops hackers from buying this domain, buying an SSL certificate, and it will still have this sign SSL over here, so it will look like our web page. Obviously for MD Bootstrap doesn't make sense, but you can imagine that the same happens to your bank website. So you'll get an email from someone and that you need to log in because to reset your password. It will look almost identical. You will not check the domain, and as a result you will end up giving your password to some hackers. So use HTTP as always. This is a recommendation from Google. You will get better SEO result, and it will just much safer. And then obviously if you are just testing your page, you don't need it, but if you want to go live and collect some data, then it's much more important to use SSL certificate. As for the backups, most of the hosting does offer them on the extra price. So this is like an extra service. So this is one thing. And this is very important because usually we don't care about it unless we get hacked and then we realize that we lost some data. So think of it, consider that, and either always have a copy of your files on your local machine, or just think of backups. And obviously, and then again, when it comes to like VPS hosting, usually you have to take care of this by yourself. So create a script which will make a backup for you, or you can buy an extra service which will just create a backup of your hard drive, and they can store it for whatever 30 days and so on and so on. But think of backups because sooner or later you're gonna need them, and it always hit hardest when when it's too late and you realize that you just lost a lot of data and you didn't have update and you didn't have a backup for that. So it's available, but usually that costs extra money. Okay guys, so let's move on to the practical part. So I'm gonna quickly show you how to deploy your page to 3 different hosting. So first gonna be GitHub pages, second gonna be like classic shared hosting, and I'm gonna show you new MDB approach to do that, which I hope you're gonna like it. So long story made short, GitHub allows us to deploy something which is called GitHub pages. So what you can do, it's fairly simple. It's also limited. But I'm gonna show you that because that might be just sufficient at the very beginning for you. So what we have to do, guys, log into the GitHub and then create a new repository with a specific name. So this name is like your username, like this one, username.github.io. So let me quickly do that. So I'm gonna create new one. I'm gonna put the username.github.io. I'm gonna change the username to my username. And now I'm gonna show you 2 options available here. I'm gonna initialize this with repository with the README. So I'm gonna create this one. And as you can see, there is some auto-generated GitHub.io. and I can edit this here. And this editor uses Markdown. And if you go to something like that, search for Markdown online editor, you will see this kind of editor which show you immediately the preview of Markdown. So for example, if you use hash, so this is like heading 1, 2, different sizes. So I recommend for you to start learning this Markdown. It's not complicated, as you can see. If you just do it like that, it might be a little bit confusing. For example, when you start typing some text and you put a new line over here, it's actually, this one is doing automatically, but sometimes it happens that you need to put like 2 spaces in the end to have a new line. Long story make short, just very basic option is to use Markdown to create some page like here. Let me just quickly copy this one and paste it over here, and I'm gonna commit this change, and now our page will be available at this address. So if I'm gonna open this one and I'm gonna have this one here. It didn't load the changes yet, but probably it will get it soon. But as you can see, this is the way to deploy our page. So if you have like a very basic page, or you are creating some project on GitHub with some source code, you can easily create a page for this one, and it will just take the content of README. So this is one option. Now, as you can see, it just uploaded, right? So this is a very basic way to create a web page, but it is already available. It has SSL by default. And the other option, if you want to get something more, advanced, let's say, let me just quickly clone it over here. So I'm gonna go git bash here. I'm gonna clone my repository, git clone. So it's here. Now what I'm gonna do, guys, I'm gonna remove this README file, and I'm gonna copy some page from our tutorial. Let's say this to the app. Oops. Oh, I lost this file. So let's get JS to the app final. So these files, I'm gonna copy them here. Whoops, why I missed this? Okay, here it is. Here it is. So I'm gonna get here. Git status will show that I removed. Oh, I didn't remove README yet, so I'm gonna do that now. And let me quickly add this to the repository. Git commit -m initial commit. Git push. Oh, what's wrong? Okay, now I didn't do git add properly, so I just committed some changes over here, and now it should be visible. So I get rid of readme md.file, and now when I refresh, oh, actually it takes some time to refresh cache, so let it wait. Let's wait a few seconds for the refresh, and meantime I will quickly go to the next point. I'm gonna show you this classic hosting, and then again, as I said, we don't have we don't have this, we don't have any affiliate. So before this lesson, I just, search for, like best free web hosting, and except for the ads which you will get here, you can find like different articles. So it's always wise to check them, right? So you will have this one. So it's showing like Hostinger as the first one, but it's not free. It's almost free, but it costs you like $1 a month. But there are also some free options, and I just pick one of those, which is this 00000webhost.com. So we're gonna use this one. To be honest, I haven't used it personally, but for the sake of test, I'm just gonna use it. So let's start with this free web hosting. As you can see, we can have one website, 300 megabytes bandwidth. This is also something which we didn't cover, so I'm just gonna quickly tell you. Bandwidth obviously is the amount of data which is transferred, from your site, from your page. So if you have like 3 gigabytes, which means that assuming that your web page is like 1 megabyte, right? So every time I'm loading your page, I'm downloading 1 megabyte of data. This means that this will be sufficient for more or less 3,000, page views of your page, right? So after displaying your page 3,000 times by different users, every user will download 1 megabyte. It will deduct from 3 gigabytes, and after 3 gigabytes probably you won't be able to use it anymore. And as you can see in the higher tiers, which are not expensive though, by the way, you can have unlimited bandwidth. So yeah, it's wise considering, but for the sake of test, let's just do this one. So I'm gonna sign up for this one, and probably I will need some time to receive a confirmation email, but let's just do it. I'm gonna sign up quickly, and meantime, let's have a look at my GitHub page. Look at this. So now I've got my application deployed to GitHub pages, right? So this is one of the apps which we've been building before, and as you can see, it's working. So the GitHub pages are very easy, but they are also limited. So they are good for like an intro demo. As you can see, they also doesn't allow you to connect the different domain, right? So if I would have my davidadach.com domain, which I own, connect to this one. Currently it's just pointing to my blog. It's pointing to my blog. So I'm not able to do this. So this is another limitation, which is not there with those kind of hosting. Okay, guys. Okay, so I did it. I'm waiting for a confirmation email. Let me check this on the another screen. Okay, didn't come yet, so let's wait. Okay, now I've got it. So I'm just verifying my email, so I think it should refresh very soon. Let's give it a couple of seconds. Yeah. Okay, so let's create some magic. You have wizard here. You can use one of those options, but we don't want to go shortcuts. I'm gonna show you the normal way. So I'm gonna choose other. So the custom, I'm gonna use my way. I'm gonna say top secret password here. I'm gonna create this one. It will do some work in background, and you can again use website builder, some WordPress installation, or I want to just upload my file, my page, because I already have it up and running locally, so I want to do it. So I'm just gonna select this one, and in case of this hosting, you have this drag and drop option. So I could possibly just drag and drop file here, but this is not always an option. So I'm gonna show you something which works always. And by the way, we need to put our page to this public HTML. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, we have this htaccess file over here, and this is configuration file for our Apache. We're not gonna talk about this one now, but let's check this. Let's see how we can upload the file here. So we're gonna use FTP for this one. So file transfer protocol. So let's have a look at that. Let me get back to dashboard where it is. So I don't want to have files. Let's try to get back to dashboard. I want to see my project, because somewhere there, and by the way, and this is answer to your question, each hosting provider will have these different options over here, but more or less you always will get somewhere this option to find, like, let's check this one, quick actions, details, and here are the details of our page. So access your website. So this is the address of our page. So currently we have some default landing page here because there is no files yet. We have a bandwidth, right? So the one which we use, disk usage, and so on and so on. And look at this. This is our file upload details. So this is something which we're gonna need now. So in order to upload our page to server, we need some FTP client. So if you type FTP client, you will get different ones. I'm gonna use FileZilla. So I'm gonna open it up right now. So this is our FileZilla window, and I'm gonna create a new connection here. So I'm going to create a new site. I'm going to call it davidadach.000 hosting, so I would know. And now as a host, we're going to provide this one, which is listed here. So we have host files 000.com. Username is the one which we just created, and password will be top secret at the moment. I'm going to click OK to save it. I'm going to open it again, and I'm going to try to connect. Let's see if this works. Logged in, and as you can see, we can see the same files which we've seen in a browser, right? So it works. So I'm going to go to public HTML, and now I'm gonna just drag and drop these files over here. So it will upload. It's uploading my files. So my files are already on the server, and now let's try to open, and as you can see, it's working perfectly fine. So our web page is just got published to this page. And then another important thing here is, if you go to probably somewhere here, I don't know this by heart, but I would expect that it's somewhere here in the settings. So if you go to manage and website settings, you could see again FTP transfer, PHP version, which server is running, but I want to see something else. Hold on. What we have here, statistics, so it will show our usage. Now it's collecting data, but I'm looking for something else. Hold on, let's have a look at tools. Oh, here it is. So set a web address. So if I would, as I mentioned to you guys before, if I had a domain, I could link it here. So as you can see, I could just use existing domain, and this will tell me that I should point my domain DNS record, which is called CNAME, pointing to this value. So I have my domain in ovh.com, and then I could, just go there and point my domain to this server. So I have domain on one server and my web page on different server, and it will work just fine. So you can connect this one on, or obviously you can just purchase a new domain over here, and then they will connect it automatically. So I could just use some domain here and just buy it, and probably it will be easier to connect it from here, right? So it's showing me different options. I should probably specify, for example, .com if I want to have a specific domain. So somewhere here there will be a domain, and that's how you can connect a website. So this is the second option, and this is like the most common. So every time you go, you'll probably find something like this. So you'll get your login, you'll have your password, and then you'll have your FTP connection address. And again, as we talk, you could also have a backups, right? So you can have this backups plan over here, and so on and so on. So this is like an extra fee. Okay then, and now the last thing which I want to show you is, let's do it here. So I'm gonna show you something which is called MDB Go. So this is something which we are offering as an MDB. It's also a free hosting for every MDB user. So you just need to register. You don't need to pay anything for this one. And once you have it, you can go to something which we call MDB CLI. So in order to use MDB CLI, you need to have a node installed, but you can just install it quickly. There is an instruction over here, so how you can do it. And once you install it, you will need a Node.js, so you can just go and install Node.js and download and install this one. Then when you have it, you just run a simple command, which is npm install. You will have this command over here or in the video. So this is like this one. npm install mdb CLI, and once you install this one, you can use mdb command line, and this is how it looks like. So if you do mdb, it will show you the list of options you can have here. So I'm gonna do mdb login. I'm gonna log in as myself, and I should be able to login. So login successful. And now guys, let's have a look at this one. So I'm gonna create some folder. Let's say hosting, and I'm gonna say mdb init. So we're gonna initialize a certain package for me. I'm gonna use mdb jQuery. So it will just create a project for me. Now, as you can see, there is this new project, Bootstrap Material Design. I'm gonna go and open this in our code editor, Visual Studio Code. And by the way, this is a very simple way to, guys, to initialize a new project. And if I click Go Live, it will open this page. So it's already have this kind of starter. And now, let me just do one small adjustment. In a package.json, I'm gonna change this name to a hosting webinar. Let's call it like this. So once I have my project, I can create an empty project. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna type mdb publish and see what's gonna happen. So my page is now getting uploaded to our servers. And as you can see, everything went okay, and it says that's gonna be available at this address. So I'm gonna copy this address, and I'm gonna go here, and as you can see, boom, our page just got deployed to our server, and by default it has SSL included, and so on and so on. So I believe that's what I say. I called it a new way. This is the new way of deploying, because when it comes to this FileZilla and so on, when you start building your page, you're gonna very quickly get frustrated that every time you change something, you have to open this FileZilla, you have to log into a server, you need to drag and drop files, you might mess up with files, you're gonna just drag and drop this file from server to your local machine, or other way around, you're gonna overwrite something or whatsoever. And here, what you are doing is just you are building your page here. You can quickly just go and use one of the predefined components. It can be MDB, it can be whatever you want. And by the way, this supports Vue, React, and Angular projects. So, usually all those shared hosting, they don't support it. I mean, they don't support Vue, React, and so on, because you will need some server running over there, or you have to run copy paste a compiled version. So every time you would have to just compile your project locally. We're gonna learn about it when it comes to webinars about Vue and React and so on. So you would have to compile the project itself, open FileZilla, and just copy paste and so on and so on. And you can already imagine that every time you are doing a lot of changes, you will have to deal with. I mean, how many times you have to update something in here. So then again, as I said, if you can just go use whatever you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be MDB. I'm gonna use MDB as an example. So you're just gonna pick one of those, like this one, copy code, replace it over here. Let's just put some container and some row and some call 3 div, and put the card over here, and let's check our local view. Oops, it's too small. Oh, now it just could look better. Let's put some margin top so it looks better here. And now let's just do MDB publish. So it will just upload it, and it may take some time to refresh, and now it's boom, just like within a second it just got deployed, right? And this is your page. And you can also if you do MDB help, you will see that you can have also option to change the name, rename projects, or you can set a domain. So then again, you are capable of using your custom domain and pointing to this server. So that's why I said I really believe this is a new approach. It's a huge simplification, and this is what we are currently working on. So MDB Go, this is our new product, and we want, I mean, we just know this pain with FileZilla and so on. We just know this limitation with GitHub pages, and here you can just use the whole project itself and just deploy within a single command. And I find it very, very, very useful, flexible, and easy to use. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Again, thanks a lot for being here with me for this hour. So if you have any questions, just please let me know. Let me know whether that was clear to you or not. Let me know whether this wasn't, too theoretical, or you got all your information which you were looking for. Is there anything else you would like to ask me, so I could just do it better in the future for you? And I hope that's going to be useful for you, and I hope that you're going to deploy some pages, for example, using this MDB CLI, and you're going to post me address to it, so I could just have a look at this. Okay, there are some questions, great, and I'm gonna go quickly through all of them. So guys, just take your projects and try to deploy them, and I'm gonna go through the questions right now. So Jay, I wish I could get those prices. So let's have a look. I don't know the prices by heart, to be honest, but let's have a look at some pricing. So let's say best web hosting. Let's have a look what we're gonna have here, except for the lot of advertisement, obviously. Let's have a look at some different hosting types. So Bluehost. Let's have a look at Bluehost. And HostGator, Hostinger, and yeah, let's just stick to those three. So let's have a look. Shared hosting, hosting. This is and this is the one, web hosting. Okay, guys, so let's have a look at, do a quick comparison here. So we have a Bluehost hosting, so it's like 2.5 euro, and we got like one website, 50 gigabytes of storage, unmetered bandwidth, certificate, standard performance, one domain included, and some subdomains. The subdomains, I hope you know, if I have a domain davidadach.com, the subdomain is everything which comes before that dot. So I could say like, I don't know, design.davidadach or whatever, right? So this is a subdomain. So here we have like 2.5 euro. Here we have like $2.74, which is approximately same. By the way, this is interesting because here we are getting some kind of promises on the HostGator that we will get some dedicated memory and CPU, which is not case in here. So here no one is saying us that we're gonna have whatever amount of CPU or RAM we're gonna have. And on this one we also don't have this assurance. Here we have a starting one for $99.99 a month. So let's say that's not, oh, there is a hack over here. It's 2.15 when you renew. So this is like the first month probably. And this is, some kind of hack or trick to get your attention. And then it will be, then again, obviously $2 is not a lot, but yeah, they are pretty much the same, right? I mean, so, and when it comes to hosting, you will also see that there are different opinions. So most often you just need to give a try and find whether you like it or not. So they are pretty much the same, all around somewhere between $2 and $3 monthly. This is obviously always, probably this offer is always when it comes to annual payment. So if you're gonna select this one, 2.5, probably you're gonna get to know that this price applies when you have, as you can see, this price applies if you have 36 months contract. So the closer it is, the shorter it is, it will just get more expensive. So at the end you will have to pay some bunch amount here. So I would probably check this one before just making a purchase over here. So yeah, just find the one which is like most flexible for you. And there was a question regarding Mongo database. So let's have a look at this one. So if you want to have a dedicated Mongo database hosting, you will get prices like, okay, so here it's like $15 per gigabyte, and this is like shared, so you don't have dedicated. So it's like low traffic, right? So it's more like, probably for some backups or whatever, or small projects. Here you have pricing. Okay, so here you have like interesting option because it's like you have database, you choose a hosting provider, so they will just use they will ask you to pay some extra money on top of that. So you will pay to AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, and then you will get some extra, fee for service on top of that. So here you have like this. This is based on transfer you are made. So you will pay like 2 cents for each gigabyte which is sent. So I hope that is answering your question or give you some insights. So yeah, here you can find some free tiers for database like MLab and so on. So that's interesting because you can have starting point, and obviously the free tier will be limited, and it's a good starting point, but at a certain point of time it's not gonna be enough for you to go on with that. with your application. So let's continue the questions. AWS Pricely OVH affordable. Yeah, I mean OVH it is. We are using OVH, but there is a price for that because we are not really satisfied with service we are getting, and we are paying a lot for our servers. We have like multiple servers running our production environment, and there are issues with OVH, like some downtimes or unexpected restart of our machines, which shouldn't happen. Let's see what else we have. Vladimir, is it also safe for payment gateways? I'm not sure what you're asking for. If you could just rephrase this one, but I guess it's your question was, is it safe for SSL certificate for payment gateways? Yeah, I mean, SSL is good enough. Obviously, if you have a payment gateway, you have to have an SSL. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really dangerous, and you might end up with, that's not good for your users, and you might end up with stealing, someone stealing their credit card details, and they're going to blame you for that. So that shouldn't happen. If you can't have SSL, or you don't know how to configure it, or it doesn't work for you for some reason, you can always use something which is called like a separate checkout. So external checkout, which means that when you pay, let's assume this is like pay button, is that you're not gonna put your details over here, credit card, but once you click pay, it will just get you to the separate page, like PayPal page, and that's gonna be secured already, and then they will pay on the separate checkout page. Okay, let's see. David, shall we learn about backend, dealing with database, API, ATC next courses? Definitely yes. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Keep on repeating, guys. I'm here for you to go through all, the subjects. We are starting with a front end, but very soon we are moving back to a backend part, and we're gonna start with WordPress. Because it's already using a backend, it's using a database, so we're gonna learn everything about databases, PHP and other languages, backend languages, so you guys just got a full picture of how it looks like, and so you could decide whether you're gonna stick to a front end or a backend or whatsoever, whatever suits you most. But it's very important to get this feeling, not to be afraid. But yeah, I'm a backend developer. I'm from the bottom of my heart, I'm like a backend developer. Obviously, I'm doing like full stack now. But then again, this is why I think it's important for you guys to try both front end and back end, and then decide whether you want to go with a front end part, back end part, or both, and become a full stack developer, which is a fun, I believe. TJ questions: at some point, a hosting company upgrade their system and depreciates the plan you are using. You are forced to move your site to their new plan or a different host. GoDaddy is doing this me right now with a shared hosting plan. I had them for years. What is the most efficient, easy way to back up and move website in these cases? So for the shared hosting, for the files, it's pretty simple. You just move files, right? So you just make a backup, download them with FTP transfer, and just copy them to a new server. For the backup of the databases, you will have to do, do a backup of your database, and that depends on how they give you an access. So you can do it with command line, you can do it just by clicking a backup file. So some of the hostings, they just allow you to click a backup and they will let you download a zip file. But obviously what you should do is you shouldn't wait until they shut down. So you should already have a new one and migrate, verify that everything is working, up and running, and then just do this migration and switch your domain from the old hosting to the new one. So for the files, they are just files. So just copy them copy paste them. They should be working out of the box. And for the database, it's usually about recreating the same scheme, the same tables, and migrating the data, right? So you on the new hosting, unless they are not forcing you to change the database, which also might be the case. So the hosting changes, but the database remains. But otherwise, you have to do a backup of your database. So download everything, and then load it to a new database. Okay, and there is one more from Jennifer. Could you please clarify the point of not needing a database if you only have a simple landing page with the contact form? Where will the contact details be stored then? Yeah, Jennifer, so basically you could possibly, or obviously you can use a database to store the data from the contact form, but you could, but as well, you could also just use a mail function, which means that what you can do, you can use a mail function, PHP function, which will basically send an email to your mailbox. So, very often you don't need to store them, right? I mean, sometimes you want to create ticket automatically. You want to have like ticketing system or whatsoever. But sometimes you just want to receive an email from the contact form. For that, you don't need a database. You just use a simple, we've already been doing this in a previous webinar, which you can find on the YouTube channel. So we've been doing a contact form. So, and in the next webinars, we're gonna have, we're gonna learn how to, use this data on the backend side and, for example, send an email. But even without PHP and sending an email, you could possibly, call some API. So you could use like SMTP JS API call. So you could technically send email from JavaScript, right? So there are packages for this one. So you just download this package and you can use your form. And you can use, for example, Google. You could use your Google email. So you just provide like SMTP address here of your Google, then username, password, and send this message. However, be careful with this one because this is JavaScript and everyone can check JavaScript. So people could possibly see your password, right? So if you put it on your front page, then someone could just check your login and password to your Gmail. But that's technically possible, right? So you can even send an email with just a JavaScript, or you could use some free SMTP, host. So you are not really risking anything, right? Because you are using some free tier or whatever. So even if someone knows your password, doesn't really change much because he could also use this free SMTP server and create its own account for that. Okay, guys. So I think I went through all the questions. Thanks again for you for staying with me for an hour. Next week, we're gonna see the same time and we're gonna learn about package managers and package bundlers, which is gonna be very useful for us. And this is like one of the very first few steps into the backend part where we'll be using more this package managers and bundlers. So we're gonna use it more often. So yeah, I hope to see you next week here. And thank you for watching. So take care, guys, stay safe, and see you next week. Hey, take care.